But the key thing also is at the same time that we got to do things legal. That is the important thing, you know. So you got to do things legal, and those people that are doing illegal things in America and that are foreigners, they are not smart. Because when you come to America, you're a guest, and you have to behave like a guest. Like when I go to someone's house and I'm a guest, then I will do everything I can to keep things clean and to make my bed and to do everything that is the right thing to do, rather than committing a crime or being abusive or something like that. So that doesn't really work in this country. So I think the important thing is when you become an immigrant, to think about, okay, I go to America because I want to use America for the great opportunities that America has in education, in jobs, creating a family, all of those kind of things. Then you have to think about, okay, if I get all of those things from America, then I have to give something back. You have a responsibility as an immigrant to give back to America and to pay back to America and to go and do something for your community for no money whatsoever. Give something back to after-school programs, Special Olympics, or whatever it is. Make this country a better place.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and most importantly, please make sure that you are following me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. And with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today, we have to take a moment to head on over to Minnesota. Why are we going to Minnesota? Well, because I want to take a moment to speak on Ilhan Omar, right? And in today's conversation and in today's news, I really just want to discuss, explain, and break down not just how anti-American Ilhan Omar and the Democrats are, but to be even more specific, how anti-American worker that they are. But let's look at this post right here. It reads, new Representative Ilhan Omar, who was born in Somalia, says that the United States is being turned into one of the worst countries. Can you believe it? A Somalian-born woman who has now turned congresswoman in Minnesota has the audacity to say that this country that took her in to save her life is now turning into one of the worst countries. The disrespect is through the roof. Let's get into this clip now. Next.
To be coming out of our country. I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy, a beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights, while our president is spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator with a military parade. It is really shocking, and it should be a wake-up call for all Americans to say this is not the country we were born in. This is not the country we believe in. This is not the country our founding fathers imagined. And this is not the country that is supported by our Constitution, our ideals, our values. And we should all collectively be out in the streets rejecting what is taking place this week.
Okay, so number one, this is a country that is supported by our Constitution and our ideals. Why? Because we had a presidential election. The people overwhelmingly chose Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris lost, as I like to say, in a bloodbath. She lost in a bloodbath. And because you can't take it, now all of a sudden we're in the dictatorship, and we have the military in the streets. They're taking things way out of context. Military, specifically speaking on U.S. Marines, are protecting federal buildings because DNC lunatics who love to riot in the name of being anti-ICE are harming federal agents, throwing bricks through their car, literally breaching federal buildings, injuring federal agents and our federal officers. So yes, the U.S. Marines are needed to protect these buildings and to protect the federal agents and officers inside. They love to take everything out of context and talk complete foolishness. And mind you, once again, this is all in the name of being against mass deportation, to remove the worst of the worst off the streets as it pertains to illegal alien criminals that are committing some of the most vicious and vile acts against the people of America, but also to protect and preserve American jobs as well. This is something that these DNC lunatics are wholeheartedly against, and I want to pivot to that next. So let's go from the disrespect of Ilhan Omar, the woman who's from Somalia, who fled Somalia in fear for her life, her and her family, and this country took her in, to which now she's disrespecting the country that took her in. Listen, if this is one of the worst countries in the world, I got a first class ticket for you back to Somalia. I bet you won't take it though, will you? No, she won't do that. She won't go back, but she'll disrespect the country that took her in. That's just wow, to say the very least. Wow, to say the very least. So now let's pivot over to a recent ICE raid that took place. Because if you let people like Ilhan Omar tell it, these ICE raids are horrible. Getting illegal alien criminals off the streets that are committing lewd and crude acts, violent acts against American citizens, that's a horrible thing. But what's even worse than that is preserving the jobs of American workers, right? That's horrible as well. Let's check out this next clip here concerning an ICE raid that occurred at a car wash here in California. I want to take a moment to unpack this a little bit. So let's get into this video next.
A Downey car wash owner is speaking out after ICE agents raided her business.
Surveillance video shows as agents arrived and chased an employee.
Eyewitness News reporter Leo Starworth live in Downey with the details. Leo.
Yeah, the owner of this car wash over my shoulder here, she's frustrated, she's stressed out. She says ICE agents have been here more than once, rounding up several of her people. She feels like they're targeting her business, so much so that she decided to just shut it down. Here's more. Surveillance cameras at Galaxy Auto Detail Car Wash in Downey capturing an unfolding ICE raid yesterday. A car wash employee is looking out when he notices a suspicious SUV pull up. The worker walks away as two ICE agents get out of the vehicle and head towards the car wash. Seconds later, the employee sprints past the camera as agents chase him. The agents eventually catching the worker, another car wash employee taken into custody as well. The owner of the car wash forced to shut her business down after several ICE raids. Her employees terrified to come to work.
Estoy enojadísima, frustrada.
I am frustrated because these guys that they picked up are good gentlemen. They don't have so much as a ticket, and their families are suffering.
The car wash owner shielding her identity, claiming ICE agents threatened her.
Me amenazaron ayer.
They came and threatened me and said if I keep talking about ICE, that they're going to detain me.
Let's take a moment to pause this right there. They just said that she was, quote, forced to shut her business down because of this. This woman would rather close down her business than hire American workers. She would rather shut her car wash business down, that I'm sure is a very lucrative business. She would rather shut it down than put up a now hiring sign. Because God forbid you'd have to give 15-minute breaks to your entitled, arrogant American employees every 2 hours. God forbid on the 4th hour, they have to have a 30-minute lunch. God forbid you'd have to, at bare minimum, pay them minimum wage. God forbid that just the most basics as it pertains to employment, you'd have to adhere to. You understand that that's what this is about, right? That's what this is about. She would rather shut the business down because if I have to entertain American workers, I would have to actually run my business the right way, paying honest wages, not operating through slave labor, with no breaks, no lunches, and below a minimum wage payment under the table. I'd rather shut this whole thing down. That is ludicrous. And I have much more to say about that, but let's care. But you know what? No. Let's take a moment to hold on, right? Because I almost forgot. Speaking of car washes, because I want to address, I already know, oh, Americans don't want to work these jobs. Americans are dumb and they're lazy and they're entitled. You want breaks and stuff like that, right? So did you know in American history, there was once a time when American citizens actually washed cars? I don't know if you knew this or not. And I lived through it, right? This is ancient history now. I want to say this was back, it was when I was in high school. So we're talking about the early 2000s, right? 2001, 2002, 2003, right? I had a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, who used to work at a car wash called Delta Sonic, right? He used to work at a car wash called Delta Sonic, a car wash slash gas station. And it was packed with American citizen workers that used to wash the cars. The car would, come out of the machine, the little automatic washer. They would dry the car off. They would spray the little shiny stuff on the tires, get your tires nice and shiny. They vacuum the inside of your car. What do you want the scent to be? Do you want strawberry? Do you want new car smell? Do you want peppermint? It make the inside of your car smell good. Wipe it down. It's nice and shiny on the inside. Can you believe that American workers used to actually do that with no issues at all? And I'll one up you on that. They weren't just American citizen workers. It was largely teenagers, because obviously, growing up in Chicago, and if you're in the Midwest or in the East Coast, you have winters. So obviously business is booming over the summer, and it's opened up a lot of summer jobs to young American teenagers, right? So they weren't just citizens, but they were also kids. But get this, here's the icing on the cake. At that specific Delta Sonic, they were almost all black. What? Black people? They were black and they were working jobs? Did anything come up missing in those cars? No. Nothing came up missing. Nothing came up missing. The cars were clean. They smelled fantastic. And if I remember correctly, if they might have been full service, which was like, we'll wash the car and pump the gas for you with no issues at all. And they operated like that for years and years and years. And why do I make it a point to specifically bring up black people, right? I'll tell you why. So the reason I make it a point to specifically speak on that car wash, right, with all the shock behind black people washing cars, and oh my God, they're working jobs and they didn't steal anything. It's not because of white racist and white supremacists and things like that. No. Hold your horses. I know where some of you thought I was going with that. No. Some of the most racist rhetoric that I heard to justify open borders came from black Democrats. You had black Democrat Kamala Harris supporters like former rapper Plies, who was running around here on the internet saying, N-words don't want to work these jobs. N-words don't want to wash cars. N-words don't want to cut grass. N-words don't want to pick strawberries and work in these farms. I can't even imagine if somebody was white saying that, what people would say. But this guy was running around talking about some, N-words don't want to do this, N-words don't want to work, N-words is lazy. You have representatives in Congress like Jasmine Crockett, who was talking to an audience full of black people, telling them, you don't want to work and pick no, you don't want to work in no farm and pick strawberries. You don't want to do that. And when they gave her pushback, the black audience gave her pushback. When in doubt, pull out slavery, pull out Jim Crow. And that's exactly what she did. They gave her pushback and she said, well, we ain't going back to picking cotton. What does picking cotton have to do with working on a farm? This idea that Americans won't work these jobs is BS. It's a lie. It's not just a lie. It's a lie from the pit of hell, straight from the devil's mouth. They will work those jobs for honest wages, but that's the problem. People don't want to pay honest wages. They want to undercut the American worker by hiring cheap, illegal alien labor. And that's why she would rather shut her business down than hire you. Now let's continue.
Business owner saying her heart is broken.
La verdad, tengo miedo.
Can't sleep. I'm frustrated. I keep looking at their faces when they were taking them away, and the guy's telling me, asking me to help them. This is not right, man. She's a hardworking woman and trying to make a living, you know, chasing the American dream, and our own federal government has just destroyed that for her.
After a decade of being in business, the car wash owner fears this might be the end.
Estoy perdiendo mucho dinero.
I can't find people to work because everyone, even if they have a valid work permit, are afraid. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to survive. I'm going to ask the council to perhaps allocate some funds to help those businesses that have been impacted by these federal operations. Trucha. Look out for each other. This is a time where we gotta go into protection mode. We're good at protecting. We're gonna survive. We're gonna come out strong.
And
All right, whatever with the rest of this news clip. We're going to shut this down shortly. I want to speak some more about businesses like this. They don't just undercut wages for American workers, right? Which essentially freezes you completely out from being able to access those kind of jobs. Because understand, those jobs that we're talking about, like with this woman that runs a car wash, you will never see a help wanted sign there because they don't want you, the American worker, to work there. They don't want you to work there. That's why she even stated, even if they have a work permit, they're scared to work here because they're afraid ICE might. So you just can't find an American citizen nowhere, huh? No, it's because you operate in the underground illegal alien economy where these jobs are only presented to those who are undocumented. They're not presented to those. It's not even a possibility for you as an American citizen to get those jobs because it's never made public when they're hiring because they don't want you there. I don't want you. But number two, in closing, these kind of operations completely destroy the American dream, as they like to abuse that term. It destroys the American dream for American citizens that want to open up a business and do it the right way. Because if you want to open a car wash and actually hire American citizens and pay them an honest wage and a competitive wage, how can you compete with the car wash down the block that's paying beneath minimum wage? That's why their prices are so cheap. Of course, you're going to have to up your prices and charge more because you're doing the right thing. And because you're doing the right thing, now you can't compete. So if you do open a car wash, you're forced to hire illegal aliens. You're forced to, because that's the only way your business is going to be able to exist and compete against other car washes. That is messed up. That completely annihilates the American dream for American citizens, because American citizens cannot compete if you're doing it the right way versus those who want to exclusively hire illegal immigrants. How do you compete with that? You can't. And because Democrats love slave labor so much, they love slave labor so much, what they'll hang over your head is that they'll say, oh my God, if you start deporting, all these people, the prices are going to go up. You see how they promote slave labor and they justify slave labor by saying that prices are going to go up if we remove those who are illegal. Yet at the same time, they pretend to be the party that's for equality, equity, and all this other BS that they don't actually really care about. But here's the thing. Will prices go up? Sure, yeah. If everybody's actually getting an honest wage. But if American citizens are working these jobs and we're making an honest wage, then it all stabilizes out eventually. Temporarily, the prices will go up. But as more American citizens are being hired, and we're charging fair market prices for that car wash and paying fair market wages, it all stabilizes out. So that discomfort would be temporary before it all leveled out. But Democrats would much rather keep their slave labor than see the American citizen employed. I just wanted to make a quick addendum to this video, right? I was editing and I almost forgot to add this story into the mix. True story. I want to take it back to ancient history when American citizens used to do stuff like wash cars, right? So back in 2001, 2002, 2003, in that same time period that my friend who used to wash cars, right? I used to have a neighbor. His name was Greg, who lived about maybe 3 houses down. We were somewhere around the same age. He was about maybe 2 years older than me. He was white. Surprise, surprise. I only say that because if I let DNC lunatics tell it, apparently we still live under Jim Crow, right? So if we're talking about 2001, 2002, 2003, clearly in the mind of the DNC lunatic, that's slavery times. So during the time of slavery in the early 2000s, I actually had a white friend, and he had a lawn business that he had. It wasn't a large scale operation. He only had about maybe 3 houses that he used to cut, something like that, about 3 houses. But there was one house in particular that had a large backyard and a large front yard. And he asked me back when we were teenagers, hey, can you help me with this yard? Like once a week, I'll pay you X amount of dollars. And the point is, shockingly, during the time of slavery in the early 2000s, a black kid and a white kid used to work together, American citizen teenagers, cutting the lawn for other American citizens with no issue. We got paid fairly. Me and him broke bread evenly, and we went on our way. So once again, this idea that American citizens just don't want to work these jobs. Oh, they don't want to cut grass. They don't want to wash cars. They don't want to paint, buildings and stuff like that. Once again, it's a bold-faced lie from the pit of hell, straight from the devil's mouth. Now let's get back into the video. And with all that being said, that does it for today's news. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video on your social media platforms. And also do not forget to follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. Thank you all for your time. And to the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.